Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's hands-on lab, leveraging MCP servers for Agentic DataOps. We're so glad that you're here. We're going to get building in just a second. Quick rounds of introductions while we're waiting on folks to get in. My name is Jenny Hurn. I am the Chief of Staff here at Ascend.io. More importantly, on the call with me is Ayush Maganahalli. Ayush is our lead field data engineer. Ayush, so grateful to have you to lead us through today's lab. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I disagree with you on the more important part, but glad to see everybody. I think if anybody was around maybe 2 years ago or so, you may have seen me on a webinar. But glad to be back. Glad to be doing these things again. So good to see y'all.
Yeah, I think you're so great at walking folks through just complex problems, making them really simple, giving us like clear guidance on how to operate and build things. You do that with customers all the time, helping them build complex solutions and agentic data engineering workflows. And so I think people are going to really learn a lot from you today. Um, One other introduction I want to make before we go too far is we do have Otto. Otto is that little goat right above the introduction there. Otto, we call the data pipeline goat or the data goat. He's our embedded AI agent in the Ascend platform and something that we're going to be collaborating with as we build out this process to showcase how you work with MCP servers to really extend agentic behavior. I do want to do just a quick couple of housekeeping things before we dive in. First, I'd love to invite you to Slack. I just posted a link in the chat, ascend.io/Slack. You can join our community Slack there. We do have a specific channel, which I will also link in the chat. If you have questions or comments as we go ahead and feel free to toss them in there. You can also use the Q&A tab in Slack, in Zoom itself, if you would like to. If you have questions as we go, I will be keeping an eye on that. I will ask and interrupt this session if we need to ask those questions of Ayush as we build together. And we'll also try to leave some time at the end for Q&A as well. So just a couple of pieces of housekeeping there. Again, the link to the Slack, the community Slack is ascend.io/Slack. And I also have a link in the Zoom chat for the specific channel that we'll be in today if you have questions or anything that you want to discuss. So with that, Ayush, can you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today before we dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. Welcome to Ascend. We're talking about agentic workflows here. And so a framework we kind of wanted people to think about while entering this whole workspace is just thinking about, okay, a couple of things: context, triggers, and tools, right? We're going to get to what each of these means, but just keep these in the back of your mind in terms of thinking about context as a way to kind of frame your agent and tell it kind of what exactly it's doing. Triggers to say, when exactly are we acting? And tools to say, okay, if we are interacting with external systems or even internal systems, what exactly is the method by which we're doing that? So keep those in
Right.
the back of your
So
head and build those out.
that makes sense. It's a really clear, easy framework for understanding how we build our agentic workflows. What are the things that we need in place? Can you give us a little bit more context on context? How do we operate with that? I can imagine if I was building like a chatbot, for example, giving it documentation might be valuable. But in the data engineering space, if we're building like data ops workflows, what kind of context do we need to provide to AI agents?
Yeah, exactly. And so, as you mentioned, context on context, and context is king. So, which is probably why you mentioned it twice. But, at the end of the day, when it comes to what we work with in Ascend, you're going to see a couple of things, right? They're all listed down here: ingest, transform, and from there, orchestration, observation, optimization of your pipelines, right? And so you're going to need context on what exactly you're doing. And for each agent, that'll kind of manifest in different ways, right? When you're working with a chatbot, for example, that might work through something like, okay, we need documentation. We need to know what the product is doing. So that way it can kind of help answer your questions, educate you on any questions that you might have. But in the context of data engineering, that might look slightly different, right? We're talking metadata. Sure, sometimes you might have access to the actual data, be able to do some things with that. But when it comes to metadata, this might look something like, okay, what occurred during my run times? How fast did this take? Did we run into any errors? And those are the sorts of things that you can kind of start using agents for, where if you provide the context and you provide the sorts of things that it needs to be able to do, you're able to tell it how to operate more efficiently and actually fix for the problems that you have at hand.
Great. So having that unified system where you have unified metadata across ingestion, transformation, orchestration, um, all your execution history, having that unified metadata is really helpful. And then I think you can even use that metadata as triggers itself for AI to operate. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the idea being here is like triggers are probably the most simple of the three, to be honest. When context comes, you're kind of thinking like, okay, like I could provide a little user provided context, literally give it a framework, or you have something a little more dynamic and get things that have occurred recently, like errors in the last run. Alternatively, when it comes to actually using tools, you might have to be a little specific in terms of what exactly you're getting into and which specific tools you're using. But when it comes to triggers, it really boils down to, okay, when do I want my specific agent to be used, right? So is it when this particular event occurs, when, this specific time occurs, these sorts of things, right? So think for something as simple as this flow succeeded. I want it to be able to do something from there. It can be as simple as that. And that's pretty straightforward to understand.
That makes sense. And I think like a lot of people are really familiar or comfortable with the trigger of I send a prompt in chat, and that is the trigger that starts an agentic workflow. It starts
Mhm.
thinking about things and building something. But what we're talking about with an event bus, it's not just a me manually triggering AI to operate, but AI kind of intelligently operating based on conditions in the system.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of like, we take a step back from the example you actually just kind of listed. It's like, okay, what is a chatbot really doing, right? Well, when you operate the chatbot, it's saying, okay, I'm actively listening for when a message comes through. And so when the event bus sits there, listens and gets that message, it triggers. And so similarly, when we use metadata, in this particular case for something like a flow run succeeding, it's sitting there waiting, saying, okay, like when this flow run succeeds, I pick up that event and then trigger whatever is necessary from there. So perfect example.
Awesome. Okay. So we have our context, which is all of the metadata around our tools and our system, what our system looks like. We have our triggers, which tells AI when to operate. And then the next part is tools, which I imagine is how AI actually operates.
Yeah. So this is where, you actually get to interact with it and things actually turn into something, right? It's not just you shouting into the void, getting nothing in response. And so let's just go from left to right here. We can work with internal systems. So when you come to Ascend, when you work with a chatbot, when you ask it to do something as simple as tell me about this project, all the stuff we were talking about with like context, where it's like, okay, it has to go look through the files. It has to go look through all the things that might be relevant to something that is referred to as a project. That's what the AI kind of gets context on. You sending the message is a trigger. But then in this particular case, the tool that we're using is saying like, okay, we want you to kind of help spit out like whatever that information is. In this case, that would just be a literal chat. And so it's showing you here, CLI commands that it would have context on to be able to call in and say, okay, these are the actual things that we need to interact with to produce the relevant information. Alternatively, we can start getting into more external systems, right? So this is kind of the reason we're talking about MCP servers is if you look at this right picture over here, you can kind of see listed under MCP servers, we have anything from Slack to GitHub to PagerDuty. And we start getting into this context of, oh, okay, now that they're external systems, how do we want those defined?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like whatever system you're operating in, tools give agents the ability to take action. So in the same way an engineer would use a CLI command to list files, for example,
Right.
you give your AI agent the ability to do that. And then you can extend that behavior by connecting it to MCP. Can you break down MCP a little bit for those who aren't super familiar with that concept?
Yeah. And, without getting too much into the weeds, because that's not really the intended purpose here, it's more so to just say that MCP servers are a way to kind of standardize things, right? Rather than have a lot of custom code where, when you're interacting with Slack or PagerDuty or GitHub, like, yes, these are all external tools, but they will have their own variations of APIs, services that they provide. And so for you to actually connect to each of those services, it will be kind of different, right? And so what an MCP kind of does is it kind of smoothens it out. It flattens out the actual interactions you need to have so that you can get something like you see on the right-hand picture over here, where instead of writing a bunch of custom like Python code, for example, where you would have to connect to Slack in one instance and connect to GitHub in another instance, you can just kind of write a couple lines of, YAML code, which is even simpler, and just say like, okay, these are the things that we're looking for. These are the interactions that you should seek out, and do it like that. And so, kind of to this middle blurb here, without MCP, you are writing a lot of custom code. That's just how it is to interact with each of these services. But with an MCP, once you have the MCP kind of like built out and have it sufficiently running, you can kind of just connect to whatever services that you find necessary, and should be pretty straightforward to do that within a couple minutes.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that meme where it's like you spend an hour automating a thing that takes like not that much time.
Mhm.
It seems like if we did have to write custom code for everything we wanted to automate with AI, it would become a burden on teams to maintain that code. Would you actually be saving time on that automation? MCP dramatically increases the return on that investment in agentic workflows because you have far less maintenance to do and you
Yeah.
can connect really easily and quickly. Then the question becomes, okay, I'm giving AI access to tools. How do I make sure that they don't go off the rails and do anything that might compromise our production data?
Yeah, that's always a difficult question. I always assume the more security minded amongst us will ask that question. So I think that really just boils down to, your architecture has a safe and effective AI collaboration, as you can see here. But what that really manifests as in Ascend is kind of this construct of workspaces and deployments, right? We intend for our deployments to be read only. It's where you will kind of have an isolated environment for you to be able to run things, but not actually necessarily interact with the data or code at hand. So that, when your AI agents do get involved, it's in a sandbox environment where you can kind of control it in the workspace in particular. As mentioned before, just to clarify what exactly I was saying, because did fumble my words a little there. Deployments will just be this isolated environment where it's read only. We don't really want our AI agents too involved. Workspaces will be where you get into the nitty gritty, kind of get your hands dirty with not only your self coding, but with your AI agents involved as well.
Yeah, so deployments, agents have access to monitor and read what's going on, but really like the development stuff happens
Yeah.
in like a development environment where you have Git controls and
All the
AI
nice
is
stuff.
promoting
Yeah.
to main by itself. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think this is a really clear framework. Obviously, today we're really focusing on that MCP piece, that tool
Yep.
piece specifically. So let's dive into actually get building. What are we going to be building today?
I'm glad you asked. So we, a little bit of a spoiler came earlier with a couple of pictures, but we will be building a Slack MCP server. And so the idea here will be once we connect to Slack, we're just able to kind of on a flow run success, as I already alluded to before, you can kind of trigger that event to send you a message, say like, okay, this is something that has occurred. Here are the stats behind it. These are the relevant pieces of information. You should just know about that, right? So you can think of it in the context of monitoring and alerting. In other cases, you might use, errors, et cetera, to kind of alert you. So you can kind of customize this however you want after this webinar. But the idea being is for now, we're just going to focus on if a flow run succeeds, we just want to know.
Cool. So really focusing on building that connection and extending agentic capabilities to external tools. So Ayush, you sent me a link to a doc that I will share in the chat. Let me see here. And this doc is docs.ascend.io/how-to/auto/Slack setup. Hopefully everyone can click that link in the chat. If not, give me a heads up in the Q&A tab or in Slack. Or sorry, I put it in the Zoom chat. But hopefully everyone is landing on a doc that looks like what you see on Ayush's screen.
You should see this.
I'm not seeing anyone say that they aren't there, so I'm going to assume most people made it.
And not to worry, again, if anybody doesn't, make it to this page or it gets lost at all throughout this entire webinar, I'll be going through this. We have it recorded. It should be pretty straightforward to follow, and even the doc should be able to be done asynchronously. So don't get worried if you get lost or things don't work out quite as how you planned right now. This is totally something that we anticipated and you can work through on your own time.
Great. Yeah. And so I think the thing that we're starting with today is we are going to be building this MCP experience in Ascend itself, because Ascend has that framework that we talked about with the unified metadata collection, the ability to trigger agents in a specific way. And so really to focus on just getting to that piece where we're building MCP server connection, we really just wanted to start in Ascend to keep it quick and easy and have that framework already in place. So starting with step 0 here, the first thing to do is sign up. So I'm going to have Ayush, you take it away from here.
So let's get into it. For those of you who are, repeat webinar customers, this may be a little familiar, and so you don't necessarily need to do this step. But for those of you who are new, we will just be signing up and creating a new Ascend instance. A couple of things to note here. So for your particular email, free accounts like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook may not necessarily work here. So we would prefer if you could use something with a particular domain. That's just to prevent any spam or bots. And so for example, here, I'll add a little bit to my name so that it works out. So I'll just call it hands-on lab 1113 at ascend.io, right? And so this is just so that I have access to it. You should be able to use your regular email and then just fill out your information. And then you can go ahead once you fill all this out. It's not too particular on the rest of the fields. Just make sure you use an email that you are familiar with. Go ahead and sign up. And so once you do this, when you do sign up, you should get an email that arrives with a ability to accept your invite. So I'm not going to share my email inbox, but what it should just look like is an email from ascend.io where you can click accept your invites. And when that pops up, and I'll show what that screen looks like in a little bit, you're able to then say, okay, take me to my actual instance.
Yeah, so I'll stall for time, Ayush, while you log in. But yeah, you should get an email. It should say response required in the subject line. And in there, you should have a picture of Otto with a link to accept your invitation. And it should take you to a screen like this. You can log in with Google authentication if you want to, or you can use a username and password. And then you can go ahead and click continue. And once you click continue, it might take a minute to spin up the instance, but you'll have your own instance of Ascend. And here
And you
we
should get something
are.
like this. Yep, perfect. And so this is a tour. You can explore this again on your own time. This will be super useful for those of you who are new to the platform or just want to kind of explore it on your own. But for now, we're just going to skip this so that we can dive straight into what we're doing. And so
Yeah, a quick note too is if you want to get back to those tours, definitely exit out of them for now. But if you want to get back to those tours, if you go to that getting started,
Yeah,
0 out of 5, you can click that back up and open them at any time after this lab if you want to get more of a deep dive into what's going on in the system here. But helpful to know how to get back to those things for sure.
perfect. For now, I'm just going to click on my workspace. We'll just let it kind of spin up, and we'll come back to this. So right now, this will be something that we'll come back to because we do need to go set up, our free Slack instances and make sure that we have something to connect to.
Cool.
And so with all that being said, we are now going to move on to step 1. Step 0 was just to make sure that we have the necessary Ascend instance that we're going to be working with here. So when it comes to step 1, you'll notice that the first thing that we're going to do is create a Slack workspace. So just go ahead and click that link and you should get into something like this. Some of you, for those of you who don't necessarily see all of this, I have been testing this a bunch, so I have a bunch of random workspaces. But for those of you who hop in, may not exactly see that screen, just go ahead and log in with either Google or the relevant email that you have at hand, and you should receive a security code to create that workspace. So depending on whether you have other workspaces, you may see a different screen, but after this, you should reach this screen.
Yeah, and one note is you could do all this work on an existing server that you already have where you're generating a bot token and connecting to an existing server. Just for testing purposes, Slack makes it really, really easy to just create a brand new free server. And so that's what we're leading people through today is kind of that process of just starting from scratch so you have a place to kind of test these things without having to go to your existing Slack, admin and try to get permissions to do that today. So I'm just stalling for a second so folks can log in and get that security code, type it in, click that button to create a workspace and catch up with us. Hopefully everyone is kind of at this window now where you can input your name. So hopefully you've got to the create page, logged in, and clicked that create new workspace.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I breeze through maybe a little bit more of a difficult part, but once you reach this page, it's just going to be filling out like basic information. Only things that you'll really need here to know are your name in this particular case. And these might be a little out of order here and there, depending on what it presents you. But all you really need is your name. So in this case, I provided my name, Ayush. From there, we generally prefer something like this just so that we can kind of help differentiate between them. So it'll be Ascend plus your name. For me in particular, I'll just name it this so that, this is what's relevant to our particular situation.
Yeah,
The actual
and we
check mark
do
here.
recommend that this not be the same name as your Slack server that your team is working on. For when you go back and try to create the bot, it'll be difficult to know which server you created. And so we recommend giving this like a unique name, something that you'll instantly recognize as, oh yeah, that's the one that I created for this hands-on lab.
Yeah. So in my case, it might Ascend hands-on lab. For you in particular, just make sure that you have your own unique name for your Slack workspace. Then we're just going to hit next here, give it a sec, and then you can skip this step to add other people. So go ahead and skip this step, and then you can go ahead and start with the limited free version. You need to pay for this. Please do not.
Yeah, limited free version. I'll say that again in case anyone is behind. You don't need to pay for Slack. You don't need to input anything. Just click that button for the limited free version. You still get all the access to build cool bots and do all the fun API stuff, even without the paid version of Slack.
Yep.
Thanks, Slack. We love you.
Yeah, and so you should land on something that looks similar to this. I assume most of you will land on the new channel that is created in your new Slack workspace. And so this is all well and good. So we now have a fully functioning Slack workspace that we can connect to and connect our MCP server to.
Great.
So with that being said, that means step 1 is now done. So we're going to move on to step 2, which is creating a Slack app. So you'll notice that we also have a link here for creating the API, or for the API creation page, excuse me. And so here, what that's going to end up landing on is you're going to go ahead and create a new app so that we can connect that to our Slack workspace, so that we can connect it to our MCP server. And that way, that's the method through which it communicates.
Awesome.
So we're going to do
go
here.
to api.slack.com/apps.
Yeah.
Great. And click that create new app button.
Create new app, and then click from scratch. And then so from scratch, let's just go ahead and name this automation. The name here doesn't particularly matter. Just make sure that you remember what you are using for this particular. And then the workspace, this is where it's relevant. You can see I have a bunch of old relics where there's a bunch of crossover. Just make sure you pick the one that you have for your particular workspace that you're using for this particular one.
Great.
In this case, I'm using Ascend Hands-On Lab. You're using the workspace that you created. And then we're just going to go ahead and create the app. So we're going to give it a sec there. It'll help populate. Some things might pop up here and there, but this should land you on the basic information page. Everything should be all well and good. Where we are going to navigate now is on this left sidebar. You should see a tab that says OAuth and permissions. Go ahead and click that. We are going to navigate there. And then within that page, we are going to scroll down to the particular area with scopes. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add 2 scopes. You can add as many as you want in the future, but for now, we are focused on this because these are the minimum required. And the OAuth scopes that we'll be adding are channels read, I believe. And I'll double check this in a second and chat. These are listed in your step. So sorry, I have continued on to step 3 here, which is just talking about the scopes here. You're just going to have chat write, and you're going to have channels read.
And a note, it's the bot token scope, not the user token scope, just
Correct.
to be clear.
Yeah, very huge.
Cool. So channels read, chat write. What do these do, I use just to give people some confidence that they're not doing anything too crazy here?
Sure. So the basic description should actually be quite helpful here. So it's just a few basic information about public channels. You know, what this might be used for when we're actually interacting is like, oh, like, can I get a list of the channels that I can actually do? Give me information on like what's actually available to me. And then chat write is literally just giving our bot the capability of writing out. So in the case where, you know, in our particular case, we want a message that says, oh, this occurred on this run. That's only capable if your bot has the ability to actually write to your Slack workspace.
Cool. Awesome. So, okay, let's assume everyone's caught up. I don't see any questions in Q&A, so I'm going to assume folks are hanging in with us. And they've got the channels read, they got the chat right. What's next?
Perfect. Yeah. And so I'm just going to make sure I have the correct steps down. So here, you know, we're still on step 3 here. We're just going to scroll to the top and we're going to click install to Ascend Hands-On Lab. In some particular cases, some of you may see this grayed out. Just give it a second. It will turn green. But once it does, you can go ahead and click install to our workspace. You'll reach this page. This is just, again, confirming that you're okay with the permissions that you are providing, which we just covered. And then go ahead and click the green button, which should say install auto automation or allow.
Great.
Once that goes through, we're still, I believe this might be step 4. Yeah. And so this is step 4. But just make sure that you come back to this field where we clicked install to Ascend Hands-On Lab. You'll now see that this has been replaced with a bot user OAuth token. This will be relevant in the future. So what we are going to be doing is clicking copy. So make sure that it's copied to your clipboard and then find somewhere to paste that, because we will be copy pasting a couple items. And if you just want to know, what we'll be copying is the bot user OAuth token. And in the future, the team ID / workspace ID, and then the channel ID. Those will all be relevant to be able to create our MCP server.
Yeah.
So with all that being said,
save that in a, note docs for a second.
Save it in your notes docs, save it in Google Docs, wherever you find relevant, just copy it and then save it there. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you should now have that somewhere safe. And so from there, speaking of the workspace and channel ID, most of you, I believe, should have your workspace open in your browser. If not, please try to open your workspace in your browser, because what we are trying to get is the team or workspace ID. Those are both the same thing. And that is right here in the URL. So this is right after the /client/ in the URL, and it should start with a T until the next slash. That is the team ID. So you can see that's what I'm doing up here. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to save that, in the same location that we copied our bot user token.
Cool. So team ID starts with a T. That's helpful. Thanks, Slack. We appreciate that.
And then you're not going to believe this, but the channel ID starts with a C. And so that comes right after the team ID. And so
Beautiful.
go ahead and copy that and then just throw that into the same location. So now you should have 3 values that you kind of have written down. One is your bot user token. The other is your team or workspace ID. And then the last is your channel ID.
Great. Cool. So I think people are following along. Let's invite that bot to a channel.
Let's do it. And so what we've now done is we've done step 5. And I think
we skipped.
I did skip a step.
3.
You're right. Good catch. Perfect. And so what we're going to do is, so we've saved all the information. We have it here. So coming back to Slack, we're just going to make sure that we actually invite. So we can just type out invite at auto automation, right? And so you can also command paste from the actual step itself. That should just be the exact same command. But this is how you get there.
/ invite.
Yep.
Yeah. /
get a cute little message. Yeah.
At your agent name, and it should pop up. And then your cute little agent's added.
And you can see here on the left that it has been added to your apps. In the case where someone or you aren't getting this app added, just make sure that you have you've actually installed it. So coming back to this step here, this actual step of installing, make sure that you've done that. That would probably be my best guess as to why that's not present for you if it's not there.
Great.
Sweet. So with all that being said, we have now completed step 5, thanks to Jenny's catch. We should have all the information from inviting the app to getting the team ID and the channel ID. And I apologize for flip-flopping between team and workspace ID. They're, again, the same thing. So if I refer to one, I'm referring to the other as well.
Cool. Yeah, they're kind of interchangeable in the Slack vernacular. Cool. So we're going back to Ascend. Can you give us a quick little tour? I know you opened your workspace, but most people are probably back at their home page.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah. So let's navigate back. Let's probably just go to the home page. We'll navigate back into our workspace just to give it, this is how we got here, and this is what you're seeing here. And so
and your workspace should have your name. So whatever name you registered your instance under, it should be there. And that's your workspace. That's the development environment that Ayush was talking about before.
Yep. Let's just get a quick interaction with Otto in here. We can just say, it's demo time. Let's see what's happening. See if Otto has anything they are thinking about. And so you can see here, so kind of what we were talking about with like context and stuff like that. And you actually, if you're interested, you can go plug through the rules and the agents and see what exactly is trying to engage with here. But this is just going to explain like, okay, what can we do in a demo? Where can you go? What are the things that we can learn about? So these are kind of things that we can interact with. We're going to engage Otto a little more heavily in the near future, but it's just, kind of wake him up, say, okay, we're here. What's happening? But for now, let's jump back into, building our Slack MCP server, because we do have the relevant pieces of information at hand. And what we're going to do is actually go ahead and save the information that we have from the bot token and the channel ID and the team ID in our secrets and vaults.
Yeah. So real quick, that sparkles icon in the top, that's how you open and close Otto. So if you click that again, Ayush, Otto goes away. You click it again, he comes back. And then how you navigate to settings is you click where your name is and you see that settings button. You'll go to settings there, and that'll be really valuable, really important for putting in those secrets that we just created with the OAuth token, the channel ID, and the workspace ID.
Cool. So hopefully most of you have navigated here at this point. We're just going to go and click on the secrets and vaults. For now, we're going to go into the default environment. So this should be the only environment that is available to you right now. And then we're going to go ahead and add a couple secrets. So you can kind of go ahead of me here, but what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up adding these 3 secrets. So you should have 3 secrets by the end of this. One called Slack app token. So what that will end up looking like is you can plug that into the name like this. So you can copy paste all of these, and you're going to copy your bot user token from what you had saved earlier. So you're going to go ahead and I'll share my screen in a second, but it should end up looking something like this. You can go ahead, create that. And similarly, you're going to do that with the next 2. So I'll be doing that on my own. If you would like to go ahead, you can go ahead of me here if you would like, and just plug those values in. Similarly, it's for the team ID. Just make sure it's the one that starts with a T.
Yeah, and we do recommend using these specific secret names because we'll be referencing them later. And so you can use different names, but then you'd have to tweak and modify the code that we have set up.
We'll call out when those secrets are used so that you know that if you have those, if you don't have these exact names, you may need to change them.
Cool.
So with all these created, you should now have 3 secrets, one for the Slack app token, which is the bot user token, the channel ID, which is the channel ID, and the team ID, which is the team ID. So now these
And
are
I
all
think
saved in your vault.
too, it's important to take a step back. The reason we're doing these in vaults is so that these secrets don't get hard coded and then saved to Git,
Yeah,
where
it
might be
it's a little
exposed.
less
Yeah.
important in this case, where it's like I'm literally sharing all of these secrets with all of you. So it's not a particular issue, but vaults are useful in the sense that like this doesn't need to be like rehashed too much for many people, but it's useful that in the case where you have secrets that you want to keep secret, this is how you do it, right? And so we're about to show you how exactly you can access these values without ever having to reveal them, because when you do end up saving your files and stuff, these will be committed to your Git repositories, and so forevermore in your version control.
Yeah. And I did have one person ask how we get back to settings. So Ayush, can you show that one more
Yeah,
time?
absolutely. So let's imagine, we're back on our homepage or we're in our workspace. You can click on this top right. So if you click on where the little circle is, you can click settings. You can then from where to navigate to where we were, click secrets and vaults. Secrets and vaults should show this. You click what we were working with, our default environment, and you should come here.
Cool. Awesome.
So
I think that answered that person's question. So perfect. Yeah. Go
cool.
ahead and create those secrets. We'll give everyone just like 15 more seconds to get those in before we go on. And we're going to be back in our workspace. Is that correct?
Correct. So if everybody kind of navigates back to step 7, you will see that we are going to begin working in our workspace and navigating out from here. So hopefully most people have gotten this done by now. We are going to go here and then click on our workspace. So let me actually go ahead and let me see if this works. So we do have a rule actually where, if there's the MCP lab, so and the MCP lab. So let's see what Auto does here. So hopefully this rule should allow us to open up some of the files that we will find relevant here. Cool. So actually, if you go ahead and use that rule, so can you help me with the MCP lab? Basically, make sure that you mention MCP lab in here. It will give you a huge summary of all the steps that we are engaging with. So you can actually use this from now instead of flip-flopping back and forth between the documentation in here once this actually completes. So you can see here, in the future, we're going to see step 7, step 8, step 9. But at the top, it should have already opened these for you. So right now, we're going to be working with the MCP file in particular, but in the future, we'll also be working here, here, and here. So that is a useful way to just pop those open for you rather than having to manually click those open. But for those of you who prefer to do things manually, just in case, where you can find it is if you open the files folder here and you navigate down to the auto folder and click on mcp.yaml, this is the file we're currently working with.
Great. Yeah. So super cool to see. Can you pull open that rule again, the MCP lab rule?
Pop that open.
So this is basically custom rules in Ascend that allow you to customize your agentic behavior, right? In this case, we said, here's all the steps for the lab, like help guide folks through the lab. And you're specifically using keywords in order to get Auto to follow this rule, right? So
yeah,
that's how Auto knows, like if you say MCP lab or Slack MCP, that this is the kind of workflow that it should be doing. But you can imagine some really cool use cases for this where it'd be like, here are the code style guides that you should always follow,
right,
or things like that.
And we even have some,
really
we have agents, we have rules. It depends on how particular you want to be. Many of you will look at this rule and be like, well, you're kind of, spelling it out for him. And that's fair, right? Like we are definitely spelling it out a little for what the bot to do. It's just a question of, how strict do you want your rule to be, right? You can make this as, let's say, loose as you want. And so the agent may go off in a direction that you're not expecting. It's just really a question of what your risk tolerance is and how willing you are to get a more non-deterministic value. But that's the rule. This should give you, the relevant part here is that we've kind of opened into what we will be editing here. So let's get into this. So step 7 is actually very straightforward. If you have this file open, all you're going to do is you can copy this and you can actually just replace the whole file with that value. And this is, remember how we said we'd call out when you'd be using your values or your secrets? This is right here. So you're using your app token, your team ID, and your channel ID. Those are all relevant here. So if you did not use those values in the secrets, make sure that you change, whatever you change there to that particular value so that it works.
Great. So again, we're changing the MCP server code to match this code that's in the doc. I think if you scroll through what Auto suggested to, you wouldn't even have to. Yeah,
exactly.
And
right.
Also, you could probably just ask Auto, like, hey, Auto, can you do step 7 for me? Auto can totally update this code for you too, so you don't
Yeah.
even have to press
I think
anything.
we're running up a little on time, so it might be a little faster for me to do it. But the idea being is like you can definitely, go ahead and get Auto to do those things for you. I'm gonna go ahead, jump to step 8. So step 7 was editing mcp.yaml to update this. And then step 8 will just be updating it to say this. So this will be your auto.yaml file rather than the mcp.yaml file. Go ahead and save
Yeah.
that.
So MCP is where we're configuring our external tools.
Yep.
Auto is how we're configuring all of the agentic behavior in
Correct.
Ascend. So you could do things like define like models and things that you want here.
Precisely.
But what we're really focused on for this is enabling that Slack MCP server so that Auto and all of the agents within Ascend can use that Slack MCP server.
Yep. Nail that right on the head. So that's perfect. And so now that we have that set up, the last thing we're going to do before we actually get into running a flow and triggering this to occur is just want to explore real quick. We also have defined a couple of automations. And so one is on a flow run success, we want you to send a particular message. You can see that this is the action that we're doing is actually just run auto. And so remember how we talked a bunch about context? Well, this prompt is what's providing that context, right? It's telling auto, what exactly do we want you to say? Like, what is all the information that's in here? I do encourage a lot of people to go through and explore, like, okay, what does it look like to give a good prompt? What does it look like to give clear instructions for an agent to follow? And similarly, in the case of a failure where it's flow run error instead of flow run success, what should you do in that case? And you'll see that those are pretty similar, but rather than analyze successes, it analyzes failures. You can start adapting things. You can customize things. We've kind of left this similar, so it's a little easier for people to jump on for the first time. But if you continue to explore, we encourage, really messing with these and saying, okay, like, how wild can these get? Like, where does the agent go if I choose to really break these apart?
Yeah. So Ayush, there is a quick question in the
Yeah.
chat that I wanted to address. So if you go back to the MCP file, someone asked about if we wanted to do multiple channel IDs, right? Here you could comma value separate all of those channel
Mhm.
IDs that you wanted to give auto access to. And then you could even break those down where in your instructions to the agents, you could say, for this use case, use this channel ID and things
Yep.
like that. But yep, this would be where you would configure those channel IDs if you wanted to use more than one. Real quick too, Ayush, I think it's always really valuable to test things incrementally. So
Mhm.
I think before we move on to testing, like if the auto automation runs, can we just ask Auto to send us a message in Slack?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So let's say, hey, Anna, can you send me a fun little message to my Slack channel?
And I'd recommend everyone do this just to test that all of your things are set up correctly. You'll get an error message if, for whatever reason, maybe your Slack token is off or if you're missing a variable. Um, but it should have a thing where it calls the Slack list channels where it sees what channels it has access to. That's that channels read command that it has access to. And then it should send a message with the chat write permission that it had access to.
Yeah. So remember how we talked earlier about like the permissions for getting a particular list of channels? This is what we're talking about. So like listing channels, doing what you want there. Looks like it may be a little stuck in this case. Let's see if I can. Okay. Let me just go ahead and kill that. We can actually just create a new chat. Let's see what it does here. If not, we can go ahead and go to the run flow and we'll incrementally test by doing the whole thing, I guess. But yeah, can you? So let's see what it does here. So again, it'll show us a step where it probably begins to call. Yeah, it'll list the channels, see what it does there. And if it gets stuck again, oh, so this time it went through. So this time it's going to post a message and then seems like you can see that it caught new channel. So again, remember everybody how we ended up only getting it connected to new channel because that's where we invited it. That's why it's only finding new channel. For example, in a case where like the user had asked, what if there are multiple channel IDs? It probably would ask the question, okay, what channel are you actually trying to send it to? And then you could list it from there. So that would
Yeah.
be something like that.
I do see you have a notification.
Yep, right there. And so it
Uh,
looks like there are 2 messages actually. It may have gone through like the first time and then this came through on the second time, but looks like we got what we needed.
awesome. Great. So now we can test a trigger, right?
Yeah.
The thing that triggers it, not just the chat trigger, but an automated trigger. And we're going to use the trigger of a flow run success.
Yep. Perfect. But before we do that, because we are going to do this in a deployment, because that's where our AI agents are in a read-only mode, we do need to merge this to our deployment because we are currently in a workspace. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to open the Git log. So if you navigate to your source control panel, up top on the left sidebar, you can click this, click open Git log and actions. Head to the right, click merge to deployment, and there should only be one. This comes with your instance. You can click production. This will show you what you are modifying. For those of you familiar with Git, this should be very familiar, very similar syntax. You can click merge, and that should do the job for you. And you can see that these have now been merged. So if we pop back now to the homepage, and I'm going to maybe hurry up a tad bit here, just so if anybody has questions at the very end, there'll be some time. But you should head to the homepage. We're going to click on the deployment here so that this is production. Again, you can X out of this. Then on the left, you'll see that we have our sales flow. You click that. You can click run flow. For now, I'm going to run a singular component. You can run the whole flow. That should be fine. Both will trigger either a flow run success or flow run failure. I'm just going to do this because it'll be a little faster and it should speed up the process by which this occurs. But what we're really waiting for is for this to pick it up, run the flow, in this case, this one component, or in many people's cases, the whole flow. But once that flow completes, we would expect our automations to pick up on that. And again, one thing to clarify here is automations are only triggered on a deployment. So in your workspace, they will not work as you would expect them to. In a deployment, they work exactly how you expect them to. So this is where they are relevant. And so that automation will trigger once this completes. And then we would expect it to take a couple seconds for the automation to go through its steps, trigger the MCP server, send a message to Slack, and then we would check our Slack channel to see if that goes through. As far as we know so far, due to Jenny's incremental testing, which you should always do, you know that we are connected to our Slack servers. And so that way, if we don't get that message, we should go troubleshoot and say, okay, what exactly are we looking for, and go for those of you who maybe did not get a message, troubleshoot that first.
Yeah, absolutely. If we go back, maybe while this is running, can you go back to the production deployment and just kind of talk through what people are looking at when they land on a deployment in Ascend?
Yeah, for sure. So this is probably the most interesting thing you'll see in Ascend for a vast majority of it. And I think that's because it has so much information that you can really take in from here, right? This is where we expect a lot of things, both from your deployment from your development to your production, to really be the area in which we're expecting you to run a lot of your high production, expected flows and see what occurs in there. So you can see here anything from active runs to errors that have occurred, what components are running, what's your latest change, and then you can open up did this automation run? In a second, you're going to see success is actively running, right? Or we could go to our flows and say what's going on in here? What is our run history? So on and so forth. All of this is present to you in a deployment. Whereas if you go into a workspace, you can edit file by file, but it doesn't give you a comprehensive outlook on, you can almost think of the health of your instance and what exactly is occurring in each of these. So this really is a one-shot way to really get a good idea of what's going on in there and making sure that your things are running the way you want them to.
Yeah, and if you click that sales flow, it looks like we got a success there, which is great. Yep. Can see if you even click that component itself, you can get down to the component level, stats and runtimes on all of these things. You can see all the fun details.
Yeah.
But it does look like you have a new Slack notification, which I'm curious about.
Let's see here. Let me go back. Let me give it a second. I think it does look like it's still running.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's still in the process of running, which I think is a little longer. I was seeing it take 50 seconds previously, so I was expecting it to be done. But we'll give it a second here. But for those of you, you are wondering okay, because it's a success, this particular one triggered. And so in the case where it's a failure, then the other one would have triggered. And so let me refresh this page. Let me see if we are now caught up. It looks like it has finished. Let's see. And it looks like we got there. So, it took a little longer than we expected. A minute 30 is not quite as fast as we had wanted, but we got what we wanted and we're seeing the fruits of our labor.
Amazing. And I think there are so many amazing use cases for something like this, where you want AI to be able to operate, to notify, to in the case of GitHub, for example, create a pull request. If something breaks, a pull request that creates a patch to fix it, so that when your engineering team is woken up at 2 a.m., all they have to do is review that code and go back to bed. So this is really, really excellent. Thank you so much for walking us through all this. I know we are right at time. Great work. Sticking right to 45 minutes. Yeah. That is really incredible. If anyone has any questions, absolutely feel free to throw them in the Q&A tab. We'll stick around for just a couple of minutes here. If anyone has any questions they want us to answer, I'm just going to stall for time for a couple of seconds. Ayush, would you mind opening up that last slide on our slide deck?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So quick next steps here, just to say, you now have access to your Ascend trial instance for the next 14 days. So absolutely enjoy it, build agentic workflows, try things out. Ayush will be sending follow-up emails over the next couple of days. If you want to chat with him through anything that you want to implement, we really encourage you to do that. You can also connect with our team on our website. You can just go to send.io and click the book a demo or see it in action, and we can meet with you there as well. But thanks again for your time today. I'm not seeing any Q&A, so hopefully that just means everyone had a really great time, really great experience building something really cool together. We'll see you next time. We do have upcoming hands-on labs. Our next one will be December 3rd on agentic data engineering on WeatherDuck, which will be really, really exciting. So we'll see you all there. Thank you for your time today and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.